Today we're going to talk about something new as part of our T-TESS, which is our teacher evaluation system that we're going to be doing this year. What is a student learning objective?
An SLO is an assessment tool that allows a teacher to quantify his or her impact on student achievement as measured within the parameters of a particular academic or an elective standard. The SLO process is a series of questions that, if answered thoughtfully and thoroughly, should lead to improvements in instruction and student learning.
So I suggest that you minimize your screen so you can do a split screen and open up your Eduphoria. Some people didn't quite understand how to do that on my last video, so I'm going to show it to you really quick how to do that. In order to make it split screen, this is what you do. Just go up there to this little box right here. You make it small, and then you make your other one page small, your Goose Creek page small, and then you can resize it however you want to. You can drag it, make it bigger, smaller, whichever way you like it, in order for you to see both things going on at the same time. Okay, you're going to click word Eduphoria, and then you're going to go to Strive, and then your goals are going to come up, the one you have already submitted to your appraiser, and you're going to scroll down until you see Student Learning Objective Form. Click the plus sign and click Create Evaluation.
This is going to be a 5-step process. Step 1 is what is the focus for my SLO. Step 2 are who are my students. Step 3 are what are my expectations for these students. Step 4 is how will I guide these students toward growth. And step 5 is a student growth tracker form. Step 1 is about the focus. It's your look at your instructional impact. The SLO should focus on the most important skills in a particular content area.
In order to get started with this entire process, what I would do is get with your team and really look at these two framing questions. How do we know what students are learning? And if students are not learning, what do we do about it? And you're going to pick something based on your TEKS that students learn for the entire year, not just something they can only learn in 6 weeks, but something that they will learn all year long, because it's something that you're going to track. This page is going to come up, and you can backdate it to the first day of school. And we're going to pretend that I am a science teacher, because with me being special ed, a lot of people are not going to relate to what I need to write mine on. So we're going to pretend that I am a science teacher. Okay, so I'm pretending that my team decided that our students need to be able to design and complete experiments and report their findings, providing supporting evidence from their data and using graphic displays to convey their meaning. So you're going to keep going through and you're going to keep answering these questions about identifying what your focus is going to be, the one thing that you're going to track on one class that you have. Step 2 is where you're going to think about what you think the students can do. So this is like their initial profile, and you have to put them in categories of well above typical, above typical. This is actually an error in Eduphoria. There shouldn't be 2 above typical. So when you see that, ignore it. Typical, below typical, and well below typical. And it's going to end up looking like this. This is an initial student skill profile, and when you look at the one class you're going to look at, this is where you would separate. So there were 3 students in this class that was well above typical, 2 above typical, 10 typical, 3 below typical, and 4 well below typical. And you have to come up with the descriptors for each one. So you have to decide, it's best to do that with your team to decide what your descriptor is going to be. It's a little more difficult for elective teachers who don't really have a team, but that is how you do the different profiles. Okay, when you finish all of that, you are going to check there, so it will save for you. And it says, what student work did you use to map students in the initial student skill profile? So you're just going to decide how you came up with the initial profile.
Step 3 is all about your expectations for where you think the students will be at the end of the year. So where step 2 was about how they are now, step 3 is about how they'll be by the end of the year.
Step 3 is very, very similar to step 2. So where they started out and where do you expect them to go? and you're going to do the same idea as you did before on step 2, and you're going to fill these out. And here's an example of how they can look. You can set up what you expect. So these are your expectations. How do you think your students are going to be able to do these things after you teach them?
Step 4 is all about how are you going to get there? How are you going to guide these students toward growth? What will you do for the highest performing, and what will you do for the lowest performing students?
And then you're going to answer step 4, which is how will I guide these students toward growth? So these are going to be the things that you're going to do in order to help these students be successful. Then you will submit this to your appraiser by clicking right there. Okay, there's one more step of what we need to do, which is step 5. And so after you submit to your appraiser, it'll come back to this page. So you want to scroll up and get right here, and you're going to click on the SLO Student Growth Tracker form. This form will come up. On this form, you are going to list all the students that you're going to track from one class on this form. So this is my pretend students for my class. Then on each student, you have to think about how they are doing now, like we did on step 2, and also how will they be after years of instruction from you. So after 1 year, at the end of this school year, how they will be. You're going to go through and they have a drop-down menu. So you're going to put in, if you think like where they're at now and where they'll be in the future. So now and later. So you go through for each student. You're going to want to save this onto your G drive because this is where you're going to want to access it multiple times throughout the school year. Throughout the school year, you'll be required to have at least 3 check-in points. So it'd be 3 different times of documentation of different data you can gather that shows a student's growth in whatever area your SLO is in. Then at the end of the school year, you're going to go through and you're going to decide what the targeted skill profile level is at the end of the year. To summarize our SLO, we're going to go through these 6 questions. Step 1 was, what is the focus for my SLO? Step 2 was, who are my students? Step 3, how will I guide these students toward their growth? Step 4, what are my expectations for these students? Step 5 was your tracking chart. Are these students progressing towards targets? And at the end of the year, we'll be able to explain, did students grow from what I did and did I learn from the process? And that is student learning objectives.